Hello folks, this is Sullla once again. We're going to be looking at patch 3.9 here and looking at the changes. Now patch 3.9 has of course already been out for about a week now. I was away traveling on vacation, so I did not have a chance to look at this. I would not have gone through this patch, but quite a few people actually asked me to do so. A lot of people were asking me to look at this patch and give my thoughts and put up another one of these patch reviews. There's no new champion in this patch. I think we'll just call it the 3.9 patch. There are quite a few changes in here. It's not I wouldn't say it's as big as some of the other patches that we've seen. A lot of little tweaks here and there, and for the most part, they look like a pretty good job. Also, unlike a lot of other patches, many of the recent patches have been very heavy on nerfing champions. This one has a lot more in the way of buffs for underpowered or underplayed champions. So we'll go ahead and look at some of them, and we'll see how quickly we can get through this. These videos often end up being really long. Alrighty, so let's look at the changes. Brand, first of all, Brand received some buffs in this patch. This is the main one. He received a mana cost reduction to his Pillar of Flame, his W. Mana cost reduced from 70 scaling up to 110 down to 70 scaling up to 90 on mana. And this is the biggest buff that he received. Pillar of Flame is Brand's skill that you max first. You max W first when you're playing Brand. And so this just makes it a lot easier for him to lane. The fact that his primary skill is now cheaper at higher ranks of the skill. So that's a nice little quality of life buff. It's not going to be enough to see Brand playing in the LCS, but for those people who enjoy Brand, it is a nice little gift to him. Now, they did actually give him a slight nerf on his conflagration. This is his E skill. Mana cost increased. It's increased by 10 at all ranks. This is the skill that Brand typically maxes second. So I was a little surprised that they did this. It is a very minor nerf to Brand. Just because he's so underplayed, I'm surprised they did this. But there you go. E is a little bit more expensive to cost for whatever reason. And the ultimate, they made the ultimate cost a flat 100 instead of scaling 100, 150, 200 mana. So for the most part, Brand's mana costs have gone down. As I said, this isn't going to change that much, but it will help him a little bit. Brand, another one of the champions who has been out for a while now, over 2 years now, and like a lot of the older champions, his mana costs were a bit higher than most champs that are released today. This is bringing him more in line with current champion design. We've seen this with a lot of the older champs like Morgana and Annie. You saw this done to them as well, reducing their mana cost. Okay, Corki. Corki got some big buffs in this patch. And in fact, Corki has been getting buffs for a while now, to the point where I think you're going to see Corki being played by the pro teams again. The reason why he didn't get played is he was nerfed a lot, and Ezreal was simply a better champion, and there wasn't much point in playing Corki because Ezreal and Corki have similar kits, and there wasn't much point in playing Corki if Ezreal does similar things and was stronger. Also, one of Corki's core items has always been Trinity Force, and Trinity Force was nerfed pretty hard at the start of Season 3. Now that has also had its cost reduced. So I think that we will see some Corki. Anyway, let's look at what they did. They reduced the cost on his Valkyrie. This is his escape skill. This is a 1-point skill. This is nice, but this isn't really the big deal. What's much more significant is this. Missile Barrage, Corki's ultimate, where he stores up the missiles. They reduced the cost from 30, 35, 40 down to a flat 20, and that is a very big buff to Corki. This drastically reduces the amount of mana that he has to spend once he hits level 6. I mean, this is a big reduction because Corki spams his Missile Barrage all the time. Spams it constantly. And he had a very real issue of running out of mana in fights. This makes it much, much less likely that that's going to happen because they've literally cut the cost in half after level 16, from 40 down to 20. That's a very big deal. That means he doesn't have to itemize mana. You don't have to go the Monomune route or anything like that. The fact that Trinity has been reduced in cost is also nice for Corki. And with a lot of the AD champions, we see a lot of champions who stack a lot of AD. His armor shred is actually pretty useful against a lot of them. So I do think we'll be seeing more Corki. He's kind of disappeared in Season 3 after being very popular throughout Season 2. But I think we'll be seeing more of him, and this is the major reason why. So if you've got your Earth Rider Corki skins, or Toboggan Corki, if anyone has that, Ice Toboggan Corki, best skin in the game, feel free to start getting in some Corki play once again. Draven got nerfed in this. Draven did need to be nerfed. He was either the strongest AD carry or very close to that. He was it was almost impossible to win trades with Draven in lane. Now, granted, his late game was not great, but his early laning phase was so strong, it was almost impossible to win against him. So what they did was they replaced his old passive. His old passive was champions he hit had like bleed stacks on them, and they would take bonus magic damage over time. Maybe it was physical, but they take bonus damage over time. Now his new passive is he gains these adoration stacks for catching axes or killing minions. When he kills an enemy champion, he consumes half his stacks and gets 3 gold per stack consumed, and then he loses half of his adoration stacks upon death. So basically, when you kill champs, you get bonus gold. I mean, okay, that's nice, but everyone would much rather have a passive where he deals more damage to enemy champions. Much better passive. So this is a nerf. This is a much weaker passive. And the stacking component means if he falls behind, it's going to be completely useless. So you snowball harder if you get ahead because you'll have all these stacks. And if you're getting lots of champion kills, yes, you'll get more gold. But it's still a nerf overall. So this weakens Draven, and his statistics on Law King shows that his win rate has actually dropped pretty significantly. I think he was at like 54, 55% win rate, which is very high. And he dropped down to about 50% after this nerf went through. So that was a pretty big deal. All right, other stuff. Eve, they fixed a bug with Eve's ultimate. Visual change only. Hecarim, pretty sizable nerf here. This is a pretty big deal. Hecarim got a lot of nerfs before, and they didn't really seem to affect him this much. Well, this one I think will affect him a lot. Rampage is Hecarim's Q. This is the skill you max first. They increased the mana cost from a flat 25 to 24, scaling up to 40. And since this is the skill that he maxes first, this is the skill that you spam to clear the jungle, this really hurts him because Hecarim already had the problem of being a very mana-intensive champion. He was one of the junglers who really needed blue to clear. Now his mana costs are even higher. And that, as I said, that really hurts him a lot. He's going to run out of mana very quickly now that his Q is what? I mean, it's like, it's not double the cost, but it's like 60% higher, roughly 60 to 70% higher. You're really going to feel that when you're spamming this skill, because this skill's on what, like it's on like a 2 or 3 second cooldown. It's a very big deal, and this hurts him quite a bit. So I expect we will see Hecarim not played professionally after this. Maybe we will. I could be wrong. I didn't think we'd see Nasus played professionally after he got his Wither nerfs, but I don't think we're going to see much of Hecarim. He's still good in the solo queue, but he has gotten hit with the nerf bat a lot, and this is probably the one that drops him out of competitive play. Janna got a buff, not a buff, a fixed bug where the buff icon countdown didn't properly match the channeling time on Monsoon. Okay, bug fix, not a big deal. Jayce was the most overpowered champ in the last patch. If you're watching the current LCS games, which are still on that patch, he is picked or banned in every game. Most OP champ in the game because all of the other overpowered champions were nerfed and he wasn't for some reason, which left Jayce as the clear strongest champ. So he's getting nerfed. He's nerfed in this patch. It is well deserved. They actually gave a little buff to his shock blast. His missile actually increased the non-accelerated speed on the missile. Okay, pretty minor. But this is the big nerf. On the acceleration gate, they have drastically increased the cooldown. And you know what? This was a very smart way to go about nerfing Jayce, because this is what makes him so strong. His acceleration gate, basically used by the professional teams as a free Shurelya's Reverie. He would scale this up, level this up, at max rank, 10-second cooldown, and Jayce would grab a blue buff. He'd have his Brutalizer. He'd have cooldown boots, so he'd have the max cooldown reduction, 40%. So his acceleration gate would be on a 6-second cooldown. Excuse me. And teams would use that to disengage from fights they didn't want to fight. It was, as I said, it was like having a free Shurelya's every 6 seconds. They'd use that to poke with the Shock Blast. By nerfing the acceleration gate, they can keep the same damage on Shock Blast, but you won't be firing it every 6 seconds anymore, which is what teams were doing. And that was a little bit ridiculous. So they've increased it to a flat 16-second cooldown. And as I said, that really hurts Jayce a lot. Now, even if you get max CDR, max cooldown reduction, 40% cooldown reduction drops this to like 11 seconds, roughly. It's like 10.5, something like that. It's around 10.5 seconds. So that is a very, very big increase over what it was before. Now, are we going to see Jayce not played? No, this is not enough to drop Jayce out of the competitive tier, but it will reduce his effectiveness by a lot. You won't have that must pick or ban Jayce must first pick or ban Jayce in every game thing, which is where he was before. So it's a smart way to nerf him. He's still very playable, but he's not the ridiculous Jayce that we've been seeing for the last 2 or 3 weeks in the pro games. So I think that was a good job there. Kayle, her Righteous Fury, her E, the area of effect no longer affects towers. That seems smart. Doesn't seem like that should be something that should be happening. Kennan has also been very popular in the professional scene. Particularly what people will do is they will grab they'll grab a Doran's Blade, they'll grab some AD to start some AD runes and masteries to start the game, and Kennan will run out to lane and he'll have like 75 AD or something, and he'd be going top lane, and if he's against a melee champ, him being ranged, he just was destroying people in lane. So what they've done is they've reduced his base attack damage at level 1. So they reduced it by what? 4. It's basically down by 4 points. And that is to rein in that early game Kennan auto attack damage, which was, as I said, the shurikens are a little too sharp and pointy, which was not really where Kennan should have been, because that's not the way. Kennan's an AP champ. He wasn't intended to be played with people like grabbing Doran's Blades at the start of the game and then just abusing melee champs. So this is a pretty smart way to tone that down a bit. And this is also a pretty sizable nerf. They've reduced the duration of his Mark of the Storm, his passive. Instead of 8 seconds, it's now down to 6. That's actually pretty short. I believe this was 10 seconds back in the day. I could be wrong, but I believe it was originally like 10 or something like that. So this reduces the amount of time he can get his stun off, because the Mark duration only lasts 6 seconds, and that's a lot shorter. Will Kennan still be played? Probably. He still has a really useful kit, and the fact that he's energy-based gives him a lot of utility. The fact that he can run away, his Lightning Rush, gives him a good escape tool. I expect we'll still see Kennan, but this definitely will tone him down a little bit and make him, bring him more in line with where he probably should be. Okay, now the biggest change in this patch was probably to LeBlanc. LeBlanc is a champion who, frankly, I don't think is designed very well. LeBlanc is a one-trick pony. She assassinates champs in lane. That's all she does. She goes mid and she tries to kill the other laner. And she does well against other mages. She does really terrible against AD champs. So if you see somebody first pick LeBlanc, you're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go, you're like, I'm going to go Jayce mid, or I'm going to go Cho'Gath mid, or something like that. Yeah, so she's a one-trick pony, but she's decent at what she does, and she has a terrible, terrible late game. What they've tried to do is sort of smooth out LeBlanc a little bit in terms of her power curve, whereby before this, LeBlanc was super strong in lane early and then becomes completely useless towards the end of the game. They're trying to smooth that out and balance her a little bit so she's not quite as strong in lane, a little bit stronger late game. I don't think they were too successful with these patch changes, so let's look at what they actually did. Sigil of Science, or Sigil, I always have trouble pronouncing that. But anyway, this is her Q, this is her main skill. Oh, I guess we should mention this. Her passive, when LeBlanc's gets low on health, she creates a little clone, and now the mirror image will attempt to run instead of standing still. I guess that makes it a little bit harder to tell which is the real one. Okay, so her Q, the mana cost was reduced, and by a lot, so this helps her laning phase quite a bit. It's been reduced by 20 mana at all levels, so that's a fairly sizable buff there. They have changed the way the damage works. The way that this skill works is, here, I've gone ahead and grabbed LeBlanc's wiki page here so you can see how this works. The way LeBlanc's her Q works is it's on a 6-second cooldown, 700 range, which is pretty decent. Not great, but decent. She throws out an orb. This is point and click. Deals magic damage and marks the target for 3.5 seconds. So there's an upfront magic damage. Here's what it is. Upfront initial magic damage. If the target takes damage from one of LeBlanc's other abilities, then the mark triggers. It deals bonus magic damage and silences for 1.5 seconds. So there's an initial magic damage. That's point and click. You can't dodge that. She just clicks on you and you take the damage. And then there's a secondary effect where that mark is consumed, where you take more magic damage and get silenced. That's the idea behind this skill. Okay. So initially, before this, LeBlanc's old kit, she dealt most of her damage initially on the impact. And then it didn't really matter that much if you triggered the mark, because the mark damage was way, way lower. See, this is the initial damage, and then this was the damage if you triggered the mark. So it was like, what? It was like 1/3? Yeah, it scaled better, but it was like 1/3 the damage, and the AP ratio was much lower. So it didn't really matter that much if you triggered the mark or not. You just got the silence, mostly. What they've done is they've changed it so LeBlanc deals the exact same amount of damage on both the initial impact and the detonation. It deals this amount on both. Now, if you compare the numbers here, you'll see LeBlanc deals more damage now if she consumes the mark. So her damage is actually higher. But, and the big but here is, it's much easier to get the initial impact damage because that's point and click. So now, although you deal more damage if you consume the mark, you deal much less damage if you don't consume the mark. I mean, significantly less damage. So in a lot of ways, I mean, this is a reworking. It's a reworking how the ability works. But in a lot of ways, this is actually a nerf to LeBlanc because it was much easier just to, throw out her Q, point and click harass. And now if you do that, it's much lower. So you now have to make sure you trigger that mark to deal her damage. And that puts you in danger. Because how is it that you trigger the mark? Well, the main way that the mark gets triggered, let's go back and look at her abilities, is her W, Distortion. LeBlanc rapidly dashes to target location. She damages enemies within a 250 radius area, and this is quite small, by the way. 250 is a very small radius. Then in the following 3 seconds, she can activate Distortion again and blink back to her starting location. Okay, so the basic LeBlanc combo is you toss out the Q, dash in with Distortion. Then while you're there, you can try to hit them with the chain. We'll get to that in a second. And if things look bad, you just use Distortion again to blink back. And Distortion is what consumes the mark on the Sigil of Silence. So, let's look at what they did with Distortion. Well, they nerfed it here by increasing the mana cost. And they did buff it slightly by the cooldown now starts on cast instead of rather than returning. So that they did reduce the cooldown, basically. But the mana cost increase, in a lot of ways, cancels out the mana cost decrease here. Distortion is generally the skill LeBlanc maxes second. You generally max Q first, W second, 1 point in E. That's the standard way that people play LeBlanc. What this really means is now, because you have to consume that mark, you pretty much have to dash in with Distortion. And of course, this opens you up to more danger as LeBlanc because that Distortion range, the range is pretty good, but you have to be very close to your target to trigger that mark. Yes, you can blink back immediately if you do it correctly, but there's always the possibility to get hit with crowd control when you're close. So in a lot of ways, it's not really a buff to LeBlanc. In a way, it's kind of a nerf in some ways, which is kind of funny because she's kind of perceived as being a weak champ anyway. And they also reduced the silence duration too on the Sigil of Silence. Now, she did get a little bit back elsewhere. Her chains, her ethereal chains, her E, did get buffed. Slow duration, time until root, reduced to 1.5 seconds, so it's easier to root someone. Now only 1.5 seconds instead of 2. Root duration was changed. Instead of a flat, now it's a flat 1.5 instead of 1, 1.3, scaling up to 2.2. This is a buff, by the way. This is a buff because her E is her 1-point skill. Because you're not going to max this until, level, 17 or 18. So this is actually a buff because people only put 1 point in the chains. And they reduced the cooldown as well. So the E skill got buffed nicely, but the Q and the W I think are in a lot of ways weaker than they were before. And I'm not sure that having better chains really makes up for that. Anyway, let's look at Mimic. This is her ultimate. The mana cost was changed. It's now 0 at all ranks instead of 150 0. That does help LeBlanc. Mimicked abilities now deal their own base damage instead of amplifying the base spell's damage. This is it's similar, it's just sort of an easier way to understand it. Okay, so you mimic the Q. It now deals 100, 200, 300 on impact, and again if the mark is detonated. And they don't say what the old damage was. So if you use a mimicked Q, 300 and then another 300 if you hit them with Distortion, that's a lot of damage. Well, I guess late game it's not all that great. Yeah, that's the problem. See, you don't get to that until level 16. It's not all that great. But, single target damage, not that bad. Mimic Distortion now deals more damage on impact. I don't know what the value was before. I'm afraid I don't have that. Similar thing, now deals damage on impact, and again if the target is rooted. So, overall, did LeBlanc really get buffed? A little, maybe a little bit. I don't think this really changed too much, though. LeBlanc is still a very situational pick. She does one thing. She tries to kill the enemy mid laner. She has very serious weaknesses, though. Yes, her harass is great in lane, but number one, she has a terrible late game. Number two, her wave clear is awful. She has some of the worst wave clear in the game for a mid laner. Her Distortion is the only way she can clear waves, and it's not really good. The best way to play against LeBlanc is play really safe in lane, farm the lane in mid, and just keep shoving waves into the tower because her wave clear is really bad. And if she goes to roam, take her tower. That's basically what you do. You're like, okay, LeBlanc, you're going to go roam all over the map. Well, we're going to ward, and we're going to punish you for taking your tower. And we're just going to shove mid when you're not there. And we're going to rely on the fact that after about the 20-minute mark, you're going to be really useless unless you've gotten like 10 kills. So overall, it's a reworking, but I don't think it's that much of a buff. And LeBlanc's win rate on LoL King has not gone up. I think it may have actually gone down because more people started playing her to test her out. And usually when more people start playing a champ, the win rate goes down because people don't know how to play them. So, interesting stuff. I can see what Riot's trying to do. I don't think it really worked. LeBlanc's kit is just not that well designed. They can't really make her strong or she becomes overpowered. They kind of have to keep her weak is the thing. It's a little bit like Aatrox's kit. You have to keep them fairly weak or they just become stupidly overpowered. Alrighty, well that was a lot about LeBlanc. That was the biggest change in this patch. It was like a full reworking of her kit. So the rest of this stuff's going to go by much faster. Okay, Malzahar. Nobody plays Malzahar. Now correctly grants vision on his Call of the Void. Damaged targets will always become visible. That's a nice little touch there. This is his silence. Yes, this is his silence. Malefic Visions will now jump when activated on a zombie champ. When those champions with Death Defiled passive, apparently the skill is getting bugged. Okay. Master Yi fixed a bug where Rageblade wasn't properly giving 2 stacks. Is anyone building Rageblade on Master Yi? Okay, I'll take your word for it. Morgana fixed a bug where Dark Binding wasn't properly snaring stealth champs. Nasus Siphoning Strike now displayed as a buff. Yay, we can finally see how much bonus damage he gets from Siphoning Strike. Good to see. People have been asking for that for ages. Nice little interface addition there. Nautilus Dredgeline no longer travels through some walls. Okay, sounds like a bug fix. Nunu, Riot goofed in the last patch. Consume dealt more damage than Smite at rank 1. This meant that Nunu was ridiculously overpowered because at level 1, his Consume outdamaged Smite. And that was a problem because he could steal any buff in the game. You could not stop him from stealing buffs. So, he's gotten nerfed. They've reduced his health per level. That's a little quality of life nerf. I guess it's a detriment of life nerf. And Consume's damage has been scaled back to a more appropriate level so that it does not outdamage Smite until you put a bunch of points in it. Until you put like 3 or 4 points in it. So no more crazy Nunu stuff at level 1. The one guy did the video on YouTube of like running around in the jungle and was counter jungling some poor Shyvana that was like level 2 when he was level 6 or something. Nunu is still good at counter jungling, but he can't steal your buff at level 1 with Consume and can't outdamage your Smite. So thank God for that. Nunu was auto-banned in every game at high elo and in the pro stuff while that was going on. Okay, Orianna, another interface thing. There's now a range indicator that shows at which the range at which the ball will return to her when attached to an allied champ. A nice little interface thing. Pantheon fixed a bug where Spear Shot wasn't scaling with bonus critical strike damage when hitting an enemy below 15% health. You wonder where they find this stuff sometimes, but okay, I'll take your word for it. Riven fixed a bug that made it possible to chain more than 3 strikes on Broken Wings. That sounds like an obvious bug fix. Shen fixed a bug where visual effect wasn't properly appearing on Key Strike. Okay, works for me. And Shyvana, the other champion who got the biggest change in this patch. Now, it's not a huge change, the way that this worked. It looks like a lot here, but they didn't change that much. They mostly changed one skill, Flame Breath. So we'll look at what they did. Okay. Fury of the Dragonborn remade, basically what they did was, the way that Shyvana's kit worked before was all the bonus Dragon Form things were listed under her passive. They've now shifted that listing to be under their respective abilities, and that makes more sense. It was kind of weird that her Dragon Form stuff was listed under her passive. Kind of weird. Excuse me. The one thing that's listed now under her passive is that she gains bonus armor and magic resist, and that's doubled in Dragon Form. And this was listed under the ultimate before. See how it says passive armor magic resist removed? It's not actually removed, they just shifted it to her passive. So they just moved that to her passive. Although I believe that the 5 armor and MR at level 1 is new. I believe it was 10, 15, 20 armor and MR starting at level 6. So I guess that's a little buff to her there. Okay. And Burnout, this is just fixed a bug here. Okay, so the Flame Breath is the main thing that was changed. This is Shyvana's E skill. This is where she, it's a skill shot. She tosses out a little thing of flame in a straight line. Nerfed here. No longer an armor reduction. No longer reduces armor. So that, you'd say, wow, that's a pretty big nerf. But she gets things back in exchange for this. now passes through all units hit instead of stopping at the first. And this is a nice buff. This allows her to clear camps faster in the jungle. Instead of hitting a Wraith and stopping, it'll go through the whole Wraith camp. It'll go through the whole Wolf camp, so that helps. Debuff duration also increased by a second, from 4 seconds up to 5. Now the damage was reduced, but not by too much. At higher levels, it's lower. That said, some of the damage has been added here. They've changed what the bonus is to debuff targets. On-hit magic damage changed to 2% of the target's maximum health, instead of 15% of Flame Breath's damage, with an AP ratio that no one used because no one built AP on Shyvana. This is a nice buff to Shyvana. So the idea is you toss out the Flame Breath, it debuffs the target. On-hit magic damage to them, now it deals 2% of their maximum health. Which is quite good. Anything that deals percentage of max health is obviously always good. So this is a big help to Shyvana. Yes, you lose the armor shred off of this skill, but it's easier to farm. The debuff duration lasts longer, and now you're shredding them with magic damage with a percentage of their maximum health. So it's very important if you're playing Shyvana to hit targets with that Flame Breath. You need to get that debuff on them so that you start dealing percentage-based max health. That's very important. So you need to make sure you land this because it is a skill shot. It's an easy skill shot to hit. It's a straight line, but you do have to make sure you hit this. They fixed a bug with the burnout in dragon form. And other thing that they changed here, little quality of life buff to Shyvana. Passive Fury gain on her ultimate. Increased to, instead of 1 Fury every 1.5 seconds, now it's a scaling 1, 2, 3. So at level 16, 3 Fury every 1.5 seconds. This will increase when Shyvana's ult is up. This will make it come up a lot faster, actually. Yes, you do get Fury when you're auto-attacking and using abilities, but this will still bring it up a lot faster. When you're running around the map, it now comes up 3 times faster at level 16, and twice as fast at level 11. So this is a big buff right there. That means she'll use her ult a lot more often, and the Fury decay while in dragon form is reduced. 5 per second instead of 6 per second. So let's see, from 100 down to 0. Let's see, at 6 per second it lasted, let's see, what's 100 divided by 6? It's like between 16 and 17 seconds. Now it's 20 seconds. 5 per second off 100, 20 seconds. So you're in dragon form slightly longer, a couple seconds longer. Overall, quality of life, probably not going to change Shyvana's viability in the professional scene, but it makes her a lot better. Much more viable in, a ranked game or whatever. So good stuff, smartly done, an intelligent way to redo Shyvana, and still keeps her overall feel to her kit, intact. All right, that was the other big change. Let's look at other stuff. We can probably run through this fairly quickly. Thresh, after using Death Sentence, the tooltip will now describe his Death Leap ability. This is where, on his Q, when he can go to the target that he grabs with his Death Sentence. Nice. Fixed a bug where Twitch could revive in stealth when Guardian Angel and Chrono Shift were on him. Okay, bug fix. Vayne, opposite effect, stealth from Final Hour, her ultimate, will now properly be broken on landing a basic attack. So the opposite of Twitch. They fixed that bug fix. Sack fixed a bug with his slingshot where aiming could preemptively break spell shields. That sounds like a bug. And Ziggs. Finally, Ziggs gets a little quality of life buff. Ziggs not played too often. Ziggs deals good damage, but the problem is he's completely skill shot based, which means it's relatively easy to dodge a lot of his damage, and he has very little crowd control. So he doesn't bring a whole lot to a team compared to other champions. They've buffed his Satchel Charge. This is his W, I believe. I believe this is his W. It's the one where he tosses a little explosive on the ground, and then you can activate it to knock somebody back or knock yourself in a direction. Okay, so first of all, it can be reactivated while in flight, while he's tossing the projectile out to detonate immediately. That's a nice quality of life thing. They've increased the missile speed, so it comes out faster. Increase the knockback distance. This is the biggest buff, by the way. Increases the distance. Not by a lot, but hey, 50 range is 50 range. Make it easier to get away, make it easier to knock somebody back towards you, etc. And this is a nice buff as well. The cooldown now starts when it's cast, not when it detonates. This can sit on the ground, I think, for about 5 seconds or so. So this means that the cooldown will be up faster if you toss it out for zoning or for something. So all of this, quality of life, nice change. Ziggs could use a little buff. He's not going to show up in the professional scene, but it's a nice little buff for him. Nicely done. Okay. General champion notes. The following abilities no longer count as a spellcast for Tear of the Goddess. Elise, Nidalee, and Jayce form shifting. It was really silly how they could stack up their tiers just by shifting forms. That was nonsense. That definitely needed to be changed. It's a good change. They've also normalized hit delay. Apparently the cast and when it would take effect was a little bit wonky, so they fixed this with Brand, Leona, Swain, and Vhagar. None of these are heavily played champions. Probably Leona is the most played out of these. Still, you want to fix that. Exhaust, if used on a CC immune champion, it will display can't be slowed. So if you're trying to exhaust Olaf when he's popped his ult, that'll show up. And summoners that disconnect while crowd control will now run back to base instead of standing there. Back in the day, by the way, when a champ disconnected, they didn't move at all. They just stood there until they died. So they've been improving that over time with each patch. Okay, items. Some changes to wards here. They've made it so killing wards now gives you more gold, and the reward structure changed, so the killer of the ward gets 50%, and whoever has the oracle also gets the other 50%. So this is something to help support to buy vision wards and oracles, give them a little bit more gold. This great change. Sightstone, Ruby Sightstone now display the number of placed ghost wards, so you can now know how many ghost wards you have on the map. I love this change. I never could remember how many Sightstone wards I actually had on the map. I have played 5 games, did them yesterday, since with the new patch, and in every support game I've already relying on this like nonstop. It's a wonderful change. Thank you for doing this, Riot. Very much needed. Okay, Oracle. Oracle's Elixir. Nerf. Getting nerfs to Oracle's Elixir. Riot has been steadily nerfing Oracle for some time now. I think that they don't really like this item. Okay, no longer expires on death. You're like, well, that sounds like a buff to Oracles. Well, yes, but everything else is a nerf on it. Duration reduced. Only 4 minutes now. Very short. Only 4 minutes. The fact that it no longer expires on death doesn't even matter that much because it only lasts 4 minutes. I mean, by the time you walk back to, by the time you drink the elixir and walk out of the base, you've already used 30 seconds of that. So, it doesn't even really matter that much that it doesn't expire on death because you're not really going to get much time to use this anyway. And this is the other really big nerf. The detection radius reduced from 750 to 600. Woo! That is a severe nerf to the Oracle. Severe nerf. That is a much, much lower range. Much lower range on the invisibility detection. Now, it is nice that you can now see the radius in which you detect them. That's a nice interface thing. But 600 range is a lot smaller than 750. This means that poor supports have to put themselves in much more danger to clear wards around Baron. You have to get much closer to the back of that Baron pit where you can get grabbed by Blitzcrank or what have you. To clear the wards, you got to get much closer to them. So, is this a buff to Oracle? No. This is a nerf to Oracle's Elixir, and a big nerf to Oracle's Elixir. So any Eve players out there, Spreakaway in his Jungle Eve is licking his chops after seeing this, because Eve can walk very close to you now without you being able to see her, and ditto for other stealth champs like Twitch and Vayne when she pops her ult and whatnot. So I'm not a huge fan of this change. I think that Oracle is already a fairly weak item, but it's just that much weaker now. Basically, the only reason why you buy only reason you buy Oracle is if you are going to have a big fight at Baron and you have to get ward control. You only buy this in tight competitive games. I wouldn't buy this in solo queue very often. Only in very competitive games, like team games and so on. And if you're clearly going for like a Baron. Otherwise, just buy pinks. It's not worth it to buy an Oracle for 400 gold when you could just buy pinks for 125 or whatever. Yeah, they're 125. The Oracle's just not that valuable anymore. You only use this for big time objective control. All right, Tyr and Manamune were stacking up way too quickly. They were way too quickly, particularly for champs like Jayce and, well, I guess Nidalee, but people aren't really playing Nidalee anymore. So what they've done is they have increased the cooldown. Now it takes 4 seconds before you can get the next stack. Same for Manamune. And the Archangel staff, they've actually increased the mana gain. So if you invest in an Archangel staff, yes, it's a longer cooldown, but you'll get more mana per charge. So they want people to go towards Archangels, not just sit there with a Tyr. And that makes sense to me. Tyr was too cheap. Tyr was severely reduced in cost at the start of Season 3. It's become extremely common. Too cheap, too easy to stack it up. So they're nerfing it, and it's a well-deserved nerf. So this is like a double nerf for Jayce. Well, triple nerf, I should say, because Jayce got his acceleration gate cooldown drastically increased, and they also changed it so he can't stack his tier while form shifting, and they nerfed tier as well. So that's a triple nerf for Jayce, and Jayce players not happy, but let's face it, Jayce needed to be nerfed. Alright, other stuff, Black Cleaver can no longer apply more than one stack of armor shred in one basic attack. Makes sense, sounds like a bug fix. Maul of Malmortius, a very rarely built item. It was too expensive for the stats it gave. People would just build a Hex Drinker and leave it there and not upgrade it. So it's getting buffed. They've increased the attack damage. They've increased the magic resist. They've increased the passive. 1 attack damage for every 2, every 2% of missing health, up from 2.5. That is an increase, by the way, every 2%. So you get more bonus attack damage. The passive does get capped at 35, down from 40. So it's less binary, less of effective. When you're almost dead, you're really strong, and not as strong when you're almost full on health. And they fixed a bug on the cooldown. Okay, anyway, overall, this is a buff to Maul. You're still not going to see this item too much except against very heavy magic damage teams, but it is a buff overall. So maybe we'll see it a little bit more. And they fixed some bugs with the stasis on Zanya's and Wooglet's Witch Cap, whatever. Alright, changes to Summoner's Rift. We're getting close to the end here, I think. Made some changes to Death Streaks. Basically, this is an attempt to deal with the proxy farming Singed, where Singed would run behind the tower, and he would just farm, and he would run in the base and farm, and if you kill him, it really doesn't matter, because if he keeps dying, he's not worth any gold, and he's still getting gold and experience, and he's tying up members of your team. So what they've done is they've made it so people who are dying constantly are worth more gold. So a player killed 3 times in a row is now worth 220, up from 182. A player killed 6 times in a row is now worth 112 instead of 62. And minimum kill value of a champ is 50 gold, whereas previously it was 15. And this was the idea behind Proxy Singed. It's like, oh, I'm 0 and 10. I have 0 kills, 10 deaths. I'm farming in your base. I'm still getting gold and experience. I'm farming 2 minion waves at once. And if you kill me, I'm worth 15 gold. LOL. So this is an attempt to deal with that, the whole proxy farming Singed. They said, we know this may affect games where people are not intentionally dying, so they may end up having to change this back. But basically, you are worth more gold if you're having a lousy game, is the idea. So this actually makes it a little bit easier to snowball games, is the idea. New idea in patch 3.9, they're doing champion on map effect, map-specific balance change to certain champions. And they have picked out 2 of the most famous examples of this. Singed on Twisted Treeline has long been infamous for being overpowered on Twisted Treeline. So they've nerfed his armor per level and ult cooldown. But the big one, Kassadin on Dominion. I don't even play Dominion, and Kassadin on Dominion is legendary for how ridiculous he is. And what's made even worse is there's no ranked play on Dominion, so you can't really stop Kassadin from being in every game. So those poor Dominion guys can't really ban Kassadin unless you queue up for draft pick, and then you have a 50-minute queue if you do draft pick. So Kassadin on Dominion, just ridiculously overpowered, and so they are nerfing his Riftwall cooldown and the range. So to those who play Dominion, a round of applause for this particular change. And there's a new item on Howling Abyss, the Aram map, and sorry guys, I don't play Aram. I don't really care. You have to get the analysis from somewhere else. Game interface fixed a bug where attack move could be triggered in chat, fixed a key binding issue, significantly improved performance when purchasing item upgrades. Okay, fair enough. League system add the ability to spectate players and teams in challenger tier, which is nice. Now I don't have to use the spectate anyone client, although I probably still will. You can just watch people in challenger tier, which is nice. You want to watch the pro players, you can get replays from them. When viewing teams and leagues tab, clicking on a team will now show a list of the team's top players. Okay, very nice. They changed the load screen. It now shows summoner icons. That's kind of nice, I suppose. I don't think it's really necessary, but they now show the summoner icons on the load screen. Ping of other summoners have been removed. Apparently people were raging when they saw high ping on people sometimes. Whatever, people fall to pieces over everything. Who cares? And they removed the progress bar because there wasn't enough space now that they crammed the summoner icon in there. Overall, looks about the same. Doesn't really change that much. They reworked the rune page. They made it a little bit easier to make rune changes. Blah, 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 blah. It was, oh yeah, that whole interface was kind of old-fashioned and didn't really work that well. Blah, blah, blah. Just easier to use the rune page system. Smart cast range indicators. Let's see, they've changed how something works here. Added tooltips and visual indicators to convey which game modes are locked. I still don't know why they lock stuff for new players. Other than ranked, I mean, yes, obviously you locked ranked play, but I don't really agree with a lot of the stuff that gets locked early on. PvP net scales down to a certain monitor size. We'll see. I'm sure they're doing this for better performance on some of these really big monitor sizes. Logitech hardware support can be disabled, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's it. Mostly good changes. Again, nothing too earth-shattering in here. Some buffs for weak champions. Some nerfs for some champs that were played in every professional game, most notably Jayce. The rework to LeBlanc, I don't think really did that much. She's still a very niche pick. She's not really that good. Shyvana, I believe it helped Shyvana a lot more, and I saw that her play statistics on LoL King went up by a fair amount, so better job on the Shyvana, not so good on LeBlanc. But yeah, there you go. That's patch 3.9. You guys have already been playing it for a while now, so this isn't all that new to you. In any case, I think we've run through everything. I think this video is long enough. So until next time, hope you've been enjoying the game, hope you've been enjoying the patch, and see you guys again soon. Have a good one.